Kia, we are so excited to have you here. So tonight we're going to be chatting with Kia, talking about her story and specifically diversity in design is something I know a lot of us are super interested in. So we're really excited. Um, so to start off, one question we have is just can you kind of share your story with us, how you got into design, how you got into your sector of design, uh, stuff like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I always tell people there were like two pivotal moments that led me to, I don't like to call it my profession, but I legit like to say this is my purpose. The very first one, and I didn't know it was happening in the moment. When I was younger, my brother was incarcerated for 15 years. And that started my family on this journey of going in and out of prison facilities. And in doing that, I remember the first year, I was like, oh my God, this fucking sucks. And I was just the visitor. And then after that, I started looking at it from the perspective of the children who were going to visit their fathers, the spouses, the parents. And then I started thinking about it from the perspective of the guards who were working in this like inadequate facility. And then finally I just kind of made peace in my soul, like, dang, how is this for the men, how is this for my brother, predominantly Black men. And it just sat with me, and I just, my family, we just did this journey. And then fast forward a few years, I went to college to be a dancer and I didn't get financial aid, and I said, let me join the military to get money for school. And I ended up getting stationed in Wichita, Kansas at McConnell Air Force Base. And I got there in July of 2001. And then in September 11th happened. Excuse me. And I was on my first of 5 deployments to the Middle East. And I was in a tent with about 14 other women, and I wanted to cry and I didn't have any privacy. So I took some sheets and I hung it from the top of my tent and I made 3 sheet walls. And that was the first space I ever created. And I bawled like a baby for 15 minutes. And it was something about how that space, it healed me, it brought me solace, it brought me comfort. And when I got out of the military, I was like, I want to do this thing where I create spaces for people. And I found out that was interior design. Now, this is the part where everyone's like, oh my God, that's such a cool story. And I'm like, is it? Because I literally just said I didn't realize interior spaces matters until I went into prisons and to war. Why didn't, or why wasn't I met with an elevated experience around interior environments and spaces in my low income community? Why not in my middle school, the community center, the after school program? And it wouldn't hit me until later, like this connection of, is is interior design meeting people of color or people from low income communities exactly where they are? Is it elevated interiors meeting them where they are? And it took me a while to get here, but I think I always knew I was on this path, because in undergrad, my thesis, while all my classmates were doing hotels and cruise ships and Disney themed things and sexy retail spaces, my thesis was a male prison facility, right? So I think those experiences stayed with me as I kind of made my way through my educational journey. But when I got into the profession, we're taught, do luxury, do hospitality, do fancy corporate office. And that's not to demonize any of those market segments of design. But it leaves a great deal of people not being advocated for in their interior environments, in their communities, other market segments. And I remember when I started my business in 2012, one of the first things we did was a nonprofit project. And it was a nonprofit project for domestic violence survivors. And it was about 12 women and 32 children. And, I go in there all exuberant, like, I'm going to provide interior design services for you. Yay. And they were like, calm down. And then one of the women, she just said to me, like, we don't need this. And I was like, wait, what? And they didn't realize how much their space could change, impact their lives So we took them through the entire design process, and it went from we don't need this to like, oh my God, I thought I could only see this on TV. Someone would do this for us. Is this a career path I could do one day? And when people think about interior design, it's the big reveal, it's a pretty picture. And yes, the space was pretty. But this woman, she came up to me and she said, Miss Kia, when I walked into this room, I realized change was possible for me. And I think I knew the people who need access to well-designed spaces the most. They don't know they don't have it. They don't know they need it, and they don't have an advocate. And I did not have that myself. So I built my entire practice around being an advocate to make sure elevated interior spaces meet all people exactly where they are in their communities. Is that fair? I feel like that was a very long answer, Gabby.
That was fantastic. I mean, it's a very moving story. I'm not sure, like you said, oh, it's a wonderful story. It's kind of sad, but it's moving and it's powerful. So
Yes, yes.
can you share more about what you do in your practice?
Yep. So after that nonprofit project, and after spending the first few years of my career doing luxury market rate, doing hospitality design, after I started my business, I said, you know what? These women were in a type of multi-housing. It was transitional supportive housing. So then I started to look at affordable, supportive, low income, ghetto housing and looking for real estate developers. Because if this building looked like this, I knew there had to be other communities or affordable housing projects that were not being designed beyond the status quo. So at Determined by Design, probably about 85% of our work is affordable, low income housing, new construction, some renovations, but predominantly communities of color, depending on where you are in the continental US. But that's about 85% of our work. We work with a lot of affordable housing developers, both nonprofit real estate developers and for-profit real estate developers. A lot of times our development partners will partner with a church, or for one project we're doing a American Legion post. But the challenge day in or day out, or the mission, is to question, challenge, change the thought process and ideologies of anyone who says things like this. Affordable housing developers don't use interior designers. You're making it too nice for these people. This demographic really doesn't need this type of space. We don't want to create spaces for these bad guys to hang out. We need to glue everything down or they'll steal it, right? These are some of the things that I am constantly met with. I have this list. It's called Shit Developers Say. And some of it is the most biased, but I mean blatantly biased language, expectations around low income people. And my job as a designer is to one, call it out, two, to educate them that if you give someone something of value, they will appreciate it and it will also reinforce their value. So that's a lot of what my practice does. We advocate quite a bit for pricing transparency. And what that looks like, we worked on a project that we just finished. It's called Capital Vista, 104 units of affordable housing, 12 stories here in DC. And we specified a 4-inch square recessed light fixture. And the general contractor said, Determined by Design specified a $400 4-inch square recessed light fixture. And I was like, and he said, but don't worry, we have a valued engineer option that's $275. Obviously, it was ugly. But also, I know better, right? I would never specify a $400 recessed square light fixture. So I get on the phone immediately with my rep and I text her and I say, hey, Marissa, why would you let me specify a $400 light fixture? And she was like, Kia, look, here's the quote. I emailed it to you. The light fixture you specified is only $175. So even with a 60% markup, my fixture still would have been cheaper than the value engineered option the general contractor was trying to substitute out. So it's that type of relentless fighting and forcing of transparency that we do on most of our projects. Now, is someone gonna walk into this building and say, oh my God, that 4-inch square recessed light fixture changed my life? No. But if you're doing it with a 4-inch square recessed light fixture, you're doing it with the decorative lighting, you're doing it with the wall covering, you're doing it with the millwork, you're doing it with the decorative tile, you're doing it with every other elevated finish, right? So a big part of what we do around design equity is saying, if you are not going to be transparent in your pricing structure, then we are going to procure it ourselves on behalf of our client and give it to them at our cost. Our industry has just, everyone talks about luxury this, luxury that, and they have to put a premium on it. And this is not to demonize high-end design or any of that thing. I think it's to start to remove language that continually reinforces that interior design or well-designed spaces is only for a select few. Because frankly, this stuff is not luxury. The Bernhardt design sofa is only $10,000 or $8,000 because it's marked up. So anytime I can get that $8,000 sofa for $3,000, why shouldn't I, as a designer, give it to my development partner at that exact same price? Why not? Who says I can't? Industry? Because industry wants this to only be for a select few. So at Determined by Design, my cost is their cost. We don't do any hidden markups. We're not reselling it. I think industry has taught us that, and no one can tell me like why we have to do this, mark it up. And then it just becomes about money. Well, how do you make money? We make money, like this is how we make money. If you get it at our cost, someone needs to coordinate the purchasing of the thing, all the things, right? The sofas, the COMs, the light fixtures. So we handle all the purchasing, purchase orders, sales orders, all these things, coordinate the shipping, delivery, and everything. And then we charge them 18% of whatever we purchase. So if I'm giving you my price and the general contractor's not, the subcontractor's not, then you're going to want me to purchase more things. And then that total starts to add up of all the things we purchase, gives us a bigger piece of that 18%. So you're still able to do what's right and make a profit. That's what we do at Determined by Design. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I think that's an awesome way to
Are we
go.
tracking? Are we having fun?
We are. I am loving it. So I guess you touched on this a little bit, but can you tell us more about some of the challenges you face, especially working with people in the industry who don't necessarily, I guess you could say, share the same values and hold weight to the same things.
So here's the deal, right? Business 101, and this is like business, like a business owner and profession, right? If you're looking for a job, people have to like you to want to do business with you, right? Is that fair? Okay. So when I started my business, I knew I was really self-aware that if I tried to go to the white real estate developer who's only hired, the same 6 white woman-led design firms in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, they probably really weren't going to give me a shot, right? And that's okay. So I said, I'm going to go find Black developers who might see a little bit of themselves in me, see my like tenacity, my hunger, see that I'm trying to do good in our communities, so we can make a difference. And that's what I did. One of the best things that I ever did when I started my business, outside of doing that nonprofit project, was pursuing developers who I knew would have a greater buy-in in me. which took down, and this isn't speculation, this is certainty. It took down a certain amount of barriers to trying to convince them to believe in what I was saying around design equity and creating elevated spaces, right? It kind of was also to my disadvantage, maybe, but like most people, the average real estate developer, especially in affordable and the low income housing sector, they don't know what an interior designer does, right? A lot of people don't know what an interior designer does, right? It's this assumption of, oh, you're going to do furniture, drapes, pillows, fabrics, right? That's fine. Those are very, very important things. So it was a level of educating them on what I did as an interior designer, the space planning, architectural finishes. I'm sorry, I know better. First and foremost, concept development, space planning, architectural finishes. So I really had to explain to them what it is that we did. So I didn't look at that as a challenge more than an educational opportunity. And once they were like, oh, wow, you do all this and you're doing it within our budget, and you're not spending more money. But oh my God, I thought interior design was a luxury thing. Everything interior design is so expensive. That's how I started out convincing people with this one Black developer. He was at the time, he was like a small development shop. Um, and he was growing and getting momentum. So as he grew, I grew. And everyone, and they'd be like, well, we want to use who's Bill using, right? Who's he using? If he's using her, we're going to use her. That's how I got my second client. Big white led developer. They did both market rate and affordable housing. And they had never, ever, ever used a separate interior design consultant on their affordable housing projects. But on their market rate, they soup to nuts did it all. But because I went after a client base who I knew would connect with me, it led me to, well, if we'll use her, we're going to use her. And then she started using me. So that's how I was able to alleviate some of the challenges right off the bat, was doing work with the people who look like me. Is that fair?
For sure. Kind of going off that, it seems like there is a lot of segregation in the industry. And one question that a lot of us had was, whether you had any suggestions for how we can try and combat that lack of diversity, especially, if we're on a team with others who may not believe there's an issue, especially those higher ups.
All right. So here's a million dollar answer to that question. Unfortunately, there ain't enough Black designers to solve the diversity problem right now. There ain't enough Latina designers. Like, it's just not enough, right? Okay, so here's what you do. You go to your leadership. This is gonna be tough. Okay, you go to your leadership and you say, hey, we're working on this project. And I noticed that, no one on the project team reflects the community that we're working on. If I could find some designers of color that reflect this community, would you be open to having a dialogue about how they can collaborate on this project? Is that fair? So you told them, I've identified a problem. I'm going to find the solution. And maybe you can even possibly find a solution beforehand and say, you know what, when we were doing our project kickoff, I noticed we were missing X. And I know these designers of color that could possibly be a resource. Here they are, right? Don't just look for another interior designer, look for, and I think that's what happens. We're only looking for the disciplines that we know, another interior designer, architect, MEP of this. But what about an artist? What about a musician? What about a community arts organization? What about a fashion textile designer? What about someone who's in animation and gaming or graphics? Think about other ways to bring creative voices to the table, even if it's not the traditional role that they are looking for on that project. If you think about the beautiful thing about kids, sometimes you could be like, is that a table? And then you could be like, no, it's a chair. For a kid, it could be all the things, but we sometimes get so caught up in our own psyche of what we see and what we know, which is why if you bring a different type of creative or voice to the table, when you see diversity missing, it can create a different type of dialogue and conversation. Is that fair? Now, what do you do if after you did all that work and you identified a problem, you presented a solution respectfully, and they're just like, no, we don't want to do that. Then what do you do? What do you do? What does that tell you right off the bat?
I mean, for me, that'd be a sign that it's not necessarily a group of people I want to be working with.
Cassandra, Aline, I saw you unmute yourselves. What do you do?
Yeah, I was going to say that would be a big indicator that that's not the type of people I want my name to be attached with.
But wait. It's COVID. You got to take whatever job you can get right now. People aren't hiring, right?
Yes, but I guess it's at the end of the day, what's more important to you?
Ding, ding, ding. You know, I had a call yesterday with an emerging designer and of color, and she's in Missouri or somewhere in the Midwest. And you know, she was just some of the things that she was saying about this firm, and I was like, why are you letting them treat you like this? And she was like, well, it's a pandemic and I gotta have a job. I'm like, oh my God. If 2020 hasn't taught us to not operate from a place of scarcity, I don't know what to do. And I think everyone's telling people graduating, there are no jobs, take what you can get. But I also know young designers who've been burnt out very, very quickly, overwhelmed. And it's like you have choice and agency, and there are a plethora of firms out there. So the thing around diversity and how can you be a true ally is speak up. That costs nothing. It costs nothing. And Cassandra, to your point, you have to start to think about, who do I want to align myself with? A lot of times in these companies, you have to look at what they're doing and how are they really providing just lip service when you try to bring other people to the table. Is that fair? Yeah. All right, Gabby, what's the next question? Did I answer that? Did I get that one good?
Absolutely. So on a similar topic, we're talking about in a firm and a project, what can we do? But what are things we can do to affect the industry as a whole?
All right. So you got to get into middle schools and high school, right? You have to start to think about, when did you realize, you know what, this is why I want to be an interior designer? What led you to this path? 2 or 3 people tell me what got them here. Gabby, I know your story.
A friend of mine was thinking about architecture, and I didn't really think architecture seemed too stuffy and mathematical. So I was like, what's like interior, or like architecture, but not. And it was interior decorating, but then I found interior design, which was like the perfect. So it was sometime in like early high school, and that determined the rest of my studies. It was a friend.
Right. Okay. How did that friend go? Do you know?
She looked at architecture, and I just started Googling like architecture and similar degrees. I hadn't heard about interior designing until I started Googling similar fields. Okay. And so that's when I heard about it.
How'd you get to interior design?
When I was 6, we were fortunate enough, my mom built our first house, and she let us kids have free reign of our rooms. Okay. And that was just the most amazing, fun thing to me. And I wanted to do it again and again and again. And I loved that room till the day I moved out when I was 17. And so that kind of got me on that path.
Okay. Who else?
So my dad was stationed down in Georgia when I was younger. So whenever he was in town, our thing we would do was drive around and look at houses that were being built, because the community I grew up in was really like up and coming when I was younger. And we'd like sneak in after hours and like walk through the houses that were just like all the framing in wood still. And so when I was lost in high school, my dad was like, "You're stupid. This is what you love doing. You can do this." So here I am.
All right. So this is the thing. Everyone comes to design from these different reference points and experiences, right? And if we are really trying to advocate for diversity and bringing more Black and Latina people into this industry, we got to think about it. And this is where it gets heady, right? You look at the wealth gap. There's statistics everywhere that talk about the wealth gap between white people and people of color, right? So that wealth gap means that they're growing up in a certain type of community. Not all. I have to start giving this caveat because people think I'm saying, oh my God, every Black person is coming up in poverty. I'm not saying that. But a great deal of them grow up in communities where the only jobs that they see, teacher, athlete, firefighter, policeman, nurse, right? A lot of these service or technical professions. That's not a bad thing. Those aren't bad things. They're not seeing interior designers. They're not seeing houses being built because those same housing projects have been there for a very, very long time, right? So they have to, they can't be what they don't see, right? So there are a ton of little Black boys who know they can be president now because they saw someone do it. So for me, the industry has a pipeline problem. There is a major interior design program in Philadelphia. They do not have one student of color enrolled in their fall 2021 class, not one. So what we need to start doing is creating mentorship opportunities in middle school to start educating students on what it means to be an interior designer, what it means to create space, what it means to have a space that is elevated. And I want to be very clear about why I keep using the word elevated, because a lot of times when people talk about community-based work, we want something dignified. And it burns my fucking soul that that's the benchmark. No one goes to Kelly Wersler and say, Kelly, I want a dignified space for my kids. Kelly, I want to, Nate Burkus, we want something very, very dignified here. But that's the benchmark for people of color. And dignified has been institutional, primary colors, arbitrary design decisions, no design concept, harsh materials, because it's dignified, right? No, they need to be elevated where you can't tell the difference between whether it's a market rate building or affordable building or any of those things. But it starts with mentorship. And Dr. Clemens, I think she did some research on this where, when programs like high school programs got rid of home ec, that's when you started to see this decline around home decoration and decor that led folks to the interior design profession. But it has to start with mentorship. It has to start with identifying a local school or high school, asking a design professional of color to come with you so you all can do a career day exercise about what you do as an interior designer, right? And you can say, well, why do I need to be a designer bring a designer of color with me? Because they need to see someone that reflects them, right? In 2021, I went to speak at a school, and the student I gave my story, and she was like, I was thinking about quitting this program because you're the first Black designer I've ever seen. And I didn't want to go into this career path where I was going to always be the only. This was in 2020, January of last year. She was about to be a junior and was about to quit, right? So that's why I think it's in representation matters. You need to bring someone of color with you to support you so you can see them as an advocate and an ally. But it has to start now in middle school and high school. That's what you can do right now. Ask your professors to reach out on your behalf of the class, and don't just do it this semester. It has to be every semester. It starts with the sophomore, like every semester you all adopt a school, for a lack of a better word, to make sure you do some type of career programming. And maybe it starts in the sophomore year. And then you go back every year so they can see the progression of your work and what you're learning as you go throughout the program. So when you get to your first job, you can say to your employer, hey, do you know since sophomore year, we've been going to this middle school to do career day. Can we bring some people from the firm too to expand on that? That's how you start. It's a pipeline problem. This is not a right now solution that we can fix because the pipeline is broken. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And I think for us especially, that's really, good information because we've really started building a connection with the local high school. We got to meet with their interior design class yesterday and we'll see them again tomorrow. So
Good.
there are definitely some things that I think we'll be excited to implement to help begin the process of making it happen. One question that someone asked that I think is really great is wondering how you're able to do kind of your everyday job working with Determined by Design while also taking on that role as such a big advocate for making change in our industry, because it's a lot. It's a lot.
I have a great team. So believe it or not, I'm of a different breed where my team members do a lot of the designing. Don't tell nobody, but I could never design a lobby again or pick some unit finishes. I've done that. So I allow my team members to design. Sometimes I do get sucked back into design work. But that's how I'm able to do it. I've made a very conscious effort to let you all do what you do best. Like let you all do what you spent all this money for. So and I'll tell you a true story. It's happening right now. We hired, and we don't have like titles on my team like junior designer, senior designer. We're all design advocates, right? We all need to be able to do a design concept. That is the only thing that has to be done my way. The concept process. Everything else have at it. And she was a star. She and now I'm gonna say this to some CSU students, and y'all have some sharp students, but this team member, she had the best portfolio I've ever seen in my life. Best portfolio ever. And we had a relationship, we stayed connected, and last year she decided she wanted to come work for me. And right off the bat, she got to design everything from space planning, concept development, all the architectural finishes. She wanted to do her own rendering style using her little fancy tablet. We did that. She presented it. She did it. She went from schematic design to DD to coordinating the drawing set, to designing a project where we didn't have to value engineer anything out, right? She was going to do another project like that. She had a lot of responsibility as a junior designer. I think she had like maybe 2 years experience when she came to me with the inclusion of her internship and working for another firm. It was a lot. She just told me on Monday she's leaving me. And she said it was a lot. She was like, I just didn't realize this was so much. And she said, and we're very strict on like, we're not doing, you work your 40 hours and you got to go. Not go, but we don't do like crazy 60-hour weeks. We have every other Friday off. The other Friday is a half a day. And she was feeling burnt out. So that's how I do it. I give my team members a lot of responsibility, but it's a lot of responsibility. And she would often tell me, like, she would remind me, she's like, Kia, like, I'm really just now becoming an adult. She's 24. And I'd be like, oh, what does that mean? But I do it because I have great team members. I have a team member, Sequoia, team member, Angelica. We have my team member, Keaton. They allow me to do what I do. Is it hard? Actually, no, because I enjoy everything that I do. Yeah, but that's how I do it. My team.
It's awesome. I love that. And I love you were talking about the 40-hour work weeks, and we try to cut it around there. And I think that's such an important thing that we really struggle with in this industry. I think.
Oh, it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is what we found out. We make everyone track their hours. And I would look at, schematic design for us as a company is a 4-week process. And I would look at everyone's hours, and they were probably spending about 40 hours on schematic. But where do you think all those 40 hours were truncated? Towards the end, towards the due date. And I don't know what it is about this industry that makes us wait to the last minute. Like, we didn't know it was, it's like, I don't get it. But for me, I would tell my team, it's like, hey guys, you're doing it within a lot of amount of work time, hours. You're just not spreading it out. Because I don't think everyone should be working 60-hour. Yes, are there deadlines? Are there exceptions? But it should not be the norm. I'm really big like, no, you worked 40 hours last week. That means you're not being efficient with your time. So we need to figure out a solution. That's how I look at it.
I love that. We need more of that for sure. I think as design students, we all deal with some of that burnout already here and there.
It's crazy. I don't get it.
Yeah. So another thing we wanted to ask about is, what it's like to be a woman in the industry, and if you feel like there's any advantages or disadvantages out there.
I mean, no, this is what did I say? What is business 101? They have to like you.
Yeah.
Right? So I show up as my whole self, just like this, right? And you know what? I'm a woman, yep, and I'm Black. Well, those are things out of my control, right? So as long as I show up as who I am, which I wish someone would have told me, it helps alleviate a lot of, I'm not gonna say hurdles. I didn't allow it to be a problem because I was more focused on just being myself, and I was more just focused on the mission, right, around design equity. So I've never thankfully had any kind of Me Too experiences. Some of my greatest mentors have been my male clients. Just recently, I was making a mistake. They happened, and my long-term client, he called me and he was like, "Yo, you're like my sister. I want to see you do good, but you're fucking up." Right? The strength is that I'm a woman, right? The strength of being as a woman is we are inherently empathetic. And a big part of what I talk about in my design process is empathy, and interior design as the greatest form of empathy and practice. Women, that's inherent to us. Leaning into that softness. So on edit for emails, hey, how you doing? Not just, hey, what's going on? Oh, I jump down to the business, right? So these are all things that I've just used as an advantage. Do I play into the pretty? Absolutely. I sure do. But also one of my clients, he goes, "Oh, I do that too. Trust me, when I got a room full of women, I'm wearing a suit that day that my wife picked out." Right. Is it awkward? Does it feel uncomfortable to be the only Black person in the room? No, because I don't allow it to be. And my experience is very, very different. And I'm learning that it's different because I have always thought, well, I have choice. Like, I can choose to just focus on the work. And while you're focused on, I'm the only Black girl in the room, I have big hair, I'm a little bit loud, all the things. I'm going to be focusing on design equity. So you focus on that while I focus on this, and let's get this shit done. Let's make change. Let's do impact. I can't change that I'm the only in the room. I can change it by mentoring a slew of people and bringing them along with me. Um, but again, I've also been spoiled. It is just now recently that I'm like, I work with predominantly people of color. Most of my developers are of color. Most of the development managers that I work with who work in these communities are of color. So just recently I was like, oh shit, I'm working with a lot of white people. What's going on? Right? It was quite fascinating. But I understand that is the exception, but I created the community I wanted to work with. I knew I had choice and agency in the people I surrounded myself with. Um, from Wicked, Women of Color and Community Development, AREP, African American Real Estate Professionals, to NOMA. Like I that was my path. Because for me, it was important that people of color know you can build, develop, and design our own communities with people who look like you. So I am the exception, and I know it's not the same for others, but it is always, if you show up whole in who you are, doesn't matter if you're the only in the room, if you're doing something or focusing on something bigger than yourself. Is that fair?
Yeah, I love that perspective. I think that's really wonderful way of looking at it. Talking about mentorship, who were some of your mentors? People who inspired you when you were in school?
Me and myself and I. So when I came up in this industry, there were no mentors. And I would look for them and I would call them and I would email them. And I wasn't even asking them for a job. I was like, oh my God, you made it. How'd you get there? Can you tell me? Crickets, nothing. I was like, damn, what's kind of fucked up? What's kind of hurt? Don't worry, I work on it with my therapist. It's still a work in progress. Cause this woman recently, she reached out to me on LinkedIn. I was like, oh no, bitch. Cause I remember I reached out to you multiple times when I started. And now you see I'm getting a little shine. Now, my therapist said I should let that go, but I didn't have no mentors. There were none. There were none. And that's okay. It taught me to be resilient. It taught me that no one is going to advocate for me and my career better than I will ever. And nothing is not figure the fuck outable. But I didn't have any mentors. Further down the line, I did get some amazing mentors, like Dr. Clemens, who I adore. But then I also had to be mindful of predatory mentors, right? I remember she's like, oh, I'll be your mentor. And I was like, oh, great, yay. And then we were at this dinner and she was like, oh, well, my mentee's Black and I'm gonna bring this Black guy because they will hit it off. And she was more excited about having a Black mentee than being my actual mentor. And I was like, okay, never mind, I'm good. Right? So coming up, no, it was me. I give this presentation called now XOXO, I Am My Own Hero. But that was it. Yeah, it was me. It was me. I'm all right with that.
That's incredible.
There's a Ingrid Mendelsohn song or something like that. It's called It Was Always You. And I sing it to myself because it was literally always me. It's a very depressing like Grey's Anatomy song, but if you listen to it and sing it to yourself, it's a business.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome. So kind of on a positive, some of our members were wondering, there's anywhere in the industry where you've seen great design practice and diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, at Determined by Design. I don't know. At Determined by Design, at the Black Interior Designers Network, at Black Artists and Designers Guild. I'm just gonna say, I'm sorry. Frankly, these companies are not getting it right. They're not getting it right. They don't want to give it right, and they're giving lip service. And you know what getting it right looks like to me? Pay transparency. Look at what these companies pay their women, people of color, and if it's not equal across the board, and if you haven't changed that in the past 8-10 months, you're not fucking doing anything. Don't show me your square. Don't tell me you're going to donate to all the causes when there are people of color in your office who are underpaid and worked like crazy. Yeah, no, I haven't seen it yet. And, you know, and I'm not trying to be like a negative Nancy about it, but the minute that we keep trying to like dress it up, and it's like, no, did you get your pay right? Is there pay equity? If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. If a business is not putting money towards solving the problem internally, then what are you doing? If you are still trotting out the one or two token people of color just to get the deal and the RFP, and they see that, and I have people telling me like, yeah, whenever there's an RFP and they put me and this other guy on it, we know it's because it's a project where there is a Black person or persons of color, and we have to fill that gap. And then we don't even get to stay on the project. It's still happening. So no, I haven't found one yet. If you guys find one, tell me, and I will shout them out from the rooftops. But we are not there yet. Yeah, we're not there yet. We still have industry leaders. You know, we have industry leaders I was telling a story about, you know, when I started my business, I got to meet with this fancy magazine editor, and I was all excited, and I went to her fancy office in New York in my little J. Crew outfit. And I was like, I just started my business, and I told her all the things. And she was like, I think you need to go back and work for a firm for 5 years. And this woman of color DM'd me, and she said, I know exactly who you're talking about. And she put her name in there. And I was like, oh my God, are you serious? And then just recently, because I've been getting a lot of press lately, this same editor, she wants to do an interview with me. And she's like, oh my God, I love you. How come we've never met? And I'm like, bitch, you don't even remember that over a decade ago, you told me to keep working for someone. And it's so deeply rooted to hear that. If she told that to this one sister who is now kind of burnt out, not knowing her path, how many others have you told it to? So that's why I think you can't move the needle but so much in 18 months unless it impacts your bottom dollar line and your operating costs. And most companies aren't ready to have that dialogue. Most companies aren't ready. We needed to hire a new team member, and it was like, okay, we need a Latina woman or a man or a straight Black man, because that's what we don't have. People still feel a little bit uncomfortable being that intentional in their hiring practices. So I'm sorry, Gabby, I haven't found anyone yet. I'm looking though. I'm looking. I have to be the example I want to see, and that's all I can do right now. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I think it's
and tell you all to use your voice for good.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'd love to open up the floor if anyone has any questions for Kia. Feel free.
I have a quick question. So if I'm thinking about going into an area within interior design that isn't necessarily like the same path you took, so I do want to help. How can I help if I'm in like a kind of a different industry? Like, is there ways to volunteer or some ways that you can still reach out? And what would you recommend for that?
I would say like Habitat for Humanity. I know in North Carolina, it's called Greensboro Tiny Home. Volunteering at any type of nonprofit and or shelter. Design for, what is organization? Design for Humanity. I would start to look for organizations like that. And you can give back that way. Is that fair?
I have a question. You've talked a lot about, lip service and firms not following through with what they say. As like in the next few years, we're going to be entering the industry. Do you think there's any sign that we can like look for that like, oh, they're not going to like follow through, or is it just we got to trial and error it?
You should directly ask. I saw on your website that you mentioned that you are a diverse firm and whatever the things and all the things people are posting. Could you tell me what changes you've made in the past 18 months? Because it's really important to me to find a firm that is walking the walk and talking the talk. And you can say that that's a fair question, right? Is that fair? And then you can kind of say, well, how do we continue to maintain that growth and creating an equitable team and doing diverse work? That's how you ask those questions. And if they get a little bit uncomfortable, that's a really good sign. right? Is that fair? And I think what happens is you all feel like, well, I have to get the job, so I can't ask these tough questions. The only thing you have to do is make sure you find a career path and a place that feels good for you from the inside out. You don't have to just take a job at any firm. Remember that you have choice, you have agency, so you do have the right to ask those types of questions. Is that fair?
Yeah, of course.
I'm looking in the chat. Any other questions? Did we learn a lot tonight? Do you feel prepared to be out in this industry? Why not? What's the biggest hurdle? Why those like very certain no's?
For me, it's just not quite knowing what direction I want to head when I graduate, but I think that's going to be more of a trial and error than anything else.
Okay, that's fair. What else? What other reasons?
Got to make it through this semester first.
It's like one thing at a time. I ain't mad, Sarah. All right, that's fair. That's fair. Have you all been doing any like virtual shadow days? No, is that like, what's that?
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard of that.
We had a student reach out to us and was like, hey, we would love to shadow you for the day. And we're like, oh, okay. Most firms are doing virtual presentations. So he sat in on a presentation with a design development presentation with one of our development partners. We introduced him and was like, hey, this is Thaddeus. He's from the University of Wisconsin. He wanted to shadow us for the day. So we just let him listen in. He was all the way in Wisconsin and I was in DC, the client was in Chicago and my other team member was in Philadelphia. And then, you know, afterwards we kept him on the line. He asked some questions. We thought they were really thought-provoking. A month later, he became our intern. That's a virtual shadow day, right? It's so low hanging fruit. And if you have an inkling, like I'm into residential, maybe I could do one for that. I might be into healthcare. I might can do one for that. I might be into corporate. Maybe I can find a firm that does that. That's how you get these virtual. It's a very low hanging fruit. It's just a Zoom dial in. You just got to ask. That's how you kind of figure it out. But Sarah, maybe you can wait till after the semester. You can focus on the task at hand. But let me tell you why it's important. Don't wait till the end of the semester. One of my students, she was like, oh my God, is this it? I'm so burnt out. It's not going well. Zoom this, I don't blah. So I said, I was like, Allie, why don't you just sit in on one of our calls? She was like, oh, I needed that because I was like, oh shit, there's stuff outside of school. There's stuff outside of the deadline, the thing, the rendering to the cloud, like uploading it to the Canva or whatever the thing is called, right? It kind of will ground you in a different type of way to think, there is something beyond this. Enjoy it while you're in it, but that's a great way to remind you this is bigger than just school for the, when you get past this part. Is that fair?
Yeah. I personally took one of those nights the other night. I was like, I cannot look at another residential project because that's all we've been doing. And so I just put my computer away and caught up on my healthcare design magazine and reminded myself what I want to do. And I was like, I felt so much better the next day.
You have to do that. What other questions do we have? Are you all, we have juniors, sophomores? What's our range?
We have everybody on here. We have
nice.
I have a question that's a little bit unrelated, but you mentioned it and I got really excited. Is there a quick version in which you can tell us your concept kind of process that you had mentioned?
Yes. All right. Berry Farm Apartments. Our concept was opening the census of ascension, right? That's our concept. How did we get there? Research. So the community where Berry Farm is located is called Hillsdale. What do hills do? They go up and down. They go up and down, right? The community close by is called Anacostia. It used to be a central fishing port where everyone would come together. And then DC is really known for go-go music. Go-go music is a sensory experience, sight, touch, sound. You feel it all over your body. And then the actual development itself, Berry Farm, was one of the brain. It was founded by Howard Schultz, who is Howard University, and Howard University is known for the yard, like this big open and grassy area. So our concept became opening the senses, an opening like a yard or a central port, something that was opening the senses, go-go music, all the things to ascension the hills, right? So see what we did there? Does that make sense? So in the project, you see this swooping ceiling element, right? That moves your eye, all the senses, up and down, sensory experience. We took the names of historical figures from Berry Farm in the Anacostia neighborhood, and we created these integrated lights into the wall. So the more people move throughout the space, the names of historical figures light up, it's motion activated, senses, right? So that's how we develop our concepts. It starts with this historical reference point, and then we really do this wordsmithing. And thesaurus.com is one of my favorite sites to take the thing and take the word and move it, and then find the word that's of the thing that excites you. Like, if you're not like, oh, that's the money, that's how we do our concept. So when I see these phrases in portfolios, like, I wanted to create a biophilic experience that brought the inside outside, and it was mid-century modern and organic. And then I see your reference photos of someone else's interiors. I want to fucking scream because you're not saying anything. That is how we do our concepts. Is that fair?
Thank you so much.
Ellie, you're laughing at me.
I'm not laughing at you. I thought it was
muted.
funny. I think you're funny.
Yeah, I'm laughing too because I know what you mean. I just started interning at DLR Group, and I'm seeing everything in such a different light.
Yeah, it's just like, well, what's the story? And I tell people all the time, like, a style is a designer's ego. The concept is the story of the people. So when people say, do you do mid-century modern? Do you do contemporary? No, I do concepts. I do stories. Stories are about the people. Hello, Business 101. You have people buy into people. So if my design is selling the story of the people in the community, that's how people ask me, how do you get the developer to do what you say? I sell the people because people buy into people. If the concept is rooted in the people, well, why did you do that pink wall? Because that was Pantone's color of the year. That's not a real reason, right? We did pink because culturally this community, and pink did blah, 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 right? That's how we're able to do what we do. Is that fair?
Yeah. I think concept was always fun in school, but it's even more fun when it's real.
Yeah, and it was because I remember my first job, and that first big project, the owner, she was like, you did all this? And I was like, yeah, because that's the only way I was taught. So I just kept doing it. And they had never done it that way. And I was like, really? It's just, yeah, just get the deliverables done. And then all your projects start to look the same because there's no new reference point of concept based off of the community, but I just don't know any better. So people know at Determined by Design, we have flexible about a lot of things, not how we do concepts, period. The first time I haven't been to Colorado in since 2014. Yeah, so it was really hard for me. Yeah. First time since 2014.
You'll be our first guest when the school allows us to have guests again.
I'm serious. If it's not, I'm gonna be mad.
Oh, you will be, we promise.
It will absolutely be you. You can count on it.
Good. Thank you all so much. I'm glad we got to do this. Thank you. You all know how to reach me, either via email or Instagram. Don't ever hesitate to reach out. I love my CSU family. I talked to several students who've graduated probably over 10 years ago. So don't hesitate to reach out to me. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kia. We really
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have a good
Kia.
night.
Yeah.